Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Markus.
And I'm Kelvin Lee.
And this is Scientists Talk Movies. We've known each other for a few years now.
Has it been a few years?
At least one. So
at least one. I mean, we met at ISMS, I guess.
We met at 2 years, 2018. We first met when I visited your institute.
Oh, that's right. No, wait. I swore we met at ISMS before you visited.
I only saw the name Kelvin popping up everywhere, and I was like, "Who is this Kelvin?" But yeah, so it was at the CFA. I think it was the first time I met you in person.
Yeah,
Brandon and Herschel were there. I've known you for a while, but I have never learned what really brought you into science or what inspired you to become a scientist. So that's what I want to learn about you.
My origin story, basically.
Yes.
So I guess we'll have to start from the very beginning.
89?
No, 90 actually. But yeah, actually it's convenient because I can calculate my age very easy. I don't know, I guess I had like a natural kind of, what's the word, magnetism towards science. So I was born in Hong Kong and I grew up in New Zealand until I think 15, 14. And then I moved to Australia where I finished my high school and went to a university, did my bachelor's and my PhD in Sydney. But to step back, there was a show that I don't know if it was in New Zealand. It was being aired in New Zealand, but I'm pretty sure it was American. It's called The YY Family. I don't know if you guys have heard of this before.
I've never heard of
Look
that.
It up. No, so yeah, it was basically a collection of every episode was about something scientific. The family had actually I don't know if it was a pet or a family member. You know, sometimes when
puppet?
No, a pet.
I mean, yeah, but was it a real animal?
It was a real, no, so this is animation. So
okay.
Yeah. And its name was Basalt. The one episode that really sticks to my mind is they did an episode on volcanic sands and stuff, or the different types of sand. And so basalt kind of got brought up. So I think that was kind of one of the things that really got me interested subliminally, I guess.
You're volcanoes seem cool.
Yeah.
Basalt seems pretty interesting.
I wanted to be a vet growing up.
Okay.
Well, I went from zookeeper to vet.
Because you're that's a more respectable.
No, exactly, yeah. Over a geologist.
And what was your favorite animal that you wanted to assist?
I don't think I had one. I just had this ambition of being a zookeeper, but there was no specific animal that I was I really like this animal and whatnot. I had a childhood friend who was very into bugs. So I guess that kind of
I think we all did. There was the bug kid.
The bug kid. Yeah, the kid who kind of knew everything about bugs and weren't afraid to touch bugs or handle bugs or whatever. But yeah, that was a close childhood friend of mine who I guess with that as well as a bunch of other things got me interested in science. And then throughout high school, I wasn't a particularly good science student. I'm also not very good at doing things people tell me to do. So I remember in biology class during high school, I would famously do my chemistry homework. And in my chemistry class, I would do biology homework. Or I would ask the teacher biology questions, which was actually kind of interesting because my chemistry teacher was a biology major and my biology teacher was a chemistry major. So I think that was why.
What's the hiring department? What's the HR like at this high school?
No, basically, it was you would be a perfect chemistry teacher. I'm but I'm a biology major.
You know what makes a good chemist? Biology.
No, exactly.
And vice versa. Oh, well, so do you feel the cross-pollination was helpful to see your biology homework from a chemistry perspective, or is this just taking advantage of the person in the room?
Actually, I think that you did that actually does bring up quite a so yeah, fast forward to now, I guess I'm really big into interdisciplinary research, or rather, I applying things that I learn from out of field to things that are in field. I do a lot of computational chemistry as well as astrochemistry in general, and now more recently more like deep learning and like artificial intelligence stuff. And so like I like applying things from fields outside of the like the focus, I guess. And then you get like a unique take on it. So I guess, yeah, in that sense, then biology, getting chemistry help from a biology teacher and biology help from a chemistry teacher. That's a
It was your first interdisciplinary collaboration.
Whether they knew it or not.
For you. Your high school chemistry homework.
What about you?
Well, from a very young age, I was a big space nerd. So I liked, I don't know. My dad, I think.
Did you say?
Space.
I was like snakes nerd.
Snakes. No, not really snakes nerd, but definitely space. Like I was really into Hubble photos that were coming out back then and looking at Mars probes in the early 2000s. And my dad was, big. He grew up seeing the first moon landing. So like he was a big Apollo person. So he had me watching like Apollo 13 and all those things. So it was pretty young when I was just like thought science was cool, and then I was very disappointed when I would like got to high school. I was like, isn't this science stuff cool? And people were like, no, nerd. It's not. Yeah, nerd. And then so I was like, fine, I'll do drama. That'll teach you that I'm not a nerd. Young age, I didn't like. Maybe young, I was like, I'll be a scientist. But then in high school, that kind of I wasn't really as interested. Although I enjoyed my science classes, but yeah, it wasn't really until like, I don't know, maybe my undergraduate where I was enjoying the coursework. And then I started watching like some of the these good educators like Carl Sagan videos and the Cosmos series and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Feynman, like those things. And sort of like the wonder of science, was sort of instilled. And then I've been just going deeper and deeper ever since.
So you woke up one day and you were a spectroscopist.
Yeah, that was a different slope which we can talk about. Because it started up in organic chemistry. I was running, no offense to organic chemistry. Like, you're doing what you're doing, and I'm glad I'm not doing it anymore. But that was sort of the start, was like combining some P-Chem with O-Chem, and then started doing like matrix isolation, FTIR spectroscopy, and then to gas phase pure spectroscopy. So yeah, that was sort of the descent. But this is Scientists Talk Movies. So I want to ask you, Kelvin. Like, was there any like fictional characters, scientists, or movies that like kind of also? I mean, you already mentioned this family, this family of animated scientists.
Family. In terms of like growing up, I don't think I actually had that many like science movies that kind of really influenced me, which is kind of surprising. I think like the movies that really kind of influenced me as a scientist, I think I kind of started really kind of watching only towards like my late teens or like early adulthood. I don't know what to late teens, I guess. Like end of high school, towards around high school and whatnot. I was big into like animation in both Western and Japanese animation. And so like one of the big kind of like influence, or like personally, not just scientifically, I guess, was like the Gundam series, like the old school ones, where it was like very like the genre itself is interesting because it's like realistic robots. It's not like superhero kind of like effects or whatnot, but like it's really about like realistic technology or like things that you could actually foresee. It's not quite like the Jetsons, if you know what I mean.
But more like science fiction in the realm of like what could actually happen.
No, exactly. Like you could easily, like, I mean, so I guess this gets into a bit of like, what does science do right kind of thing in movies. Personally, like, wormholes, teleporters, anything with quantum in front of it.
Always right.
Yeah, it's always exactly, like infallible. Like I'll watch those kinds of movies as movies, but obviously I don't really take away, like, it doesn't influence me as a scientist, I guess. Whereas like in like, to me personally, or to memory anyway, the Gundam series really kind of like the early ones. There were some series that became more about like become just completely unrealistic, but the early ones were like, it was nice because it was riding the wave of like the 70s and 80s where kind of people were starting to get like a bigger picture of what, like, space, or their picture of
were kind of coming into be like its own at
Yeah,
that
exactly.
moment.
They had the concept of like laser-based communications and stuff like that. And so like that stuff was like, wow. Like
That was like kind of young technology even at the
no,
time.
exactly. Well, I don't know if you could even call it young technology. Like, I mean, the laser was
It was only
invented
20
like,
years old, maybe.
yeah, and people were using lasers specifically for research and not for like, you know, industrial use just yet. At least I don't think in the 80s. And so like the idea of, yeah, they were kind of like they it's part of like, you know, plots or like scenes where they would be like, yeah, we're using laser communications, or like they had the idea of like space colonies, of how people could like, I think it was a Nature article from like way back when on like design of a space colony, or maybe I'm just thinking of like the Dyson sphere. I don't know, maybe, or that was like the space colony might have been like a popular science design or something. Anyway, they like it was like a foreseeable future of humans living in space. How would we take into account like generating artificial gravity and stuff like that? So I guess like, yeah, Space Odyssey is kind of like down a similar vein to it, but this was obviously from like a, well, you could reduce it down to a cartoon or like something from
Right. But something I think that good sci-fi does really well is that it kind of gives you takes yourself out of it. So like you can give a new perspective on things that are not even part of the science, but part of, let's say, cultural or politics or other themes that like you can say, although it's not in our world, like it is in this world. So now we can talk about it in a safe place. So I think there were some of those themes in Gundam as well. Not that I followed the show as closely. But.
Films, I guess I watched growing up quite a lot were like I really like Pixar, so I still like watch Pixar movies quite a lot. So I have a passing interest in animation as well, like doing animations, or like I use Blender for all of my table of contents graphics.
Cool.
And that's one thing that I really like. Well, I like as a scientist and as a person as well, I'm big into like color and like visualization. So being able to do
I've noticed like that in your talks where I'm like, is he like harassing his graphics department to make these like cool looking things, or like how is he getting these? So it's part of it's a hobby, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's actually, so I enjoy writing talks. Well, I don't like enjoy the process of writing talks, but I like to see like writing presentation or preparing presentations as like, you know, art in itself, where like you can kind of present information in both like an aesthetically pleasing way as well as being factually correct or factually accurate. But yeah, so like I quite like animation, that kind of stuff. So like Pixar, as a kid growing up, I think I watched Monsters Inc. like 30 times or something like that. That's one of my big go-to movies.
Yeah, when I took animation in high school because I was very into animated movies too.
Really?
And my animation teacher was an interesting guy. So he had worked on Tiny Toons. You know, like the Looney Tunes spinoff?
Yeah.
So he had worked on that, and he like mentored Pete Docter, who was the guy who directed Monsters Incorporated. So like he would be like, oh, Pete just messaged me. And so like that was sort of a cool connection. So I was always like, you know, Pete's done like Up and all these great.
That's a casual flex.
I mean, this is my animation teacher. This is 2 degrees away, but I feel like I could probably get a hold of him on the phone if I needed to.
Wow, that's pretty damn cool.
One of the Pixar greats is was at least knew my animation teacher. So yeah, but I've always loved following Pixar. And
so how long did you like do animation for at school?
I mean, it was like an art credit in high school, so it was like maybe it would just be one semester, but you know, we did just sort of everything of like learning how to do whatever the keyframes, and then in betweening, and we had to like do our own little like final movie project. So I was doing like, I was back in the age of like flash animation. So
I was about to say
but a lot of it was like old school, like with a piece of paper and a light board, and you would draw over it, and then you had a camera that you would just go frame by frame and like make little animations. I'm sure there's somewhere saved on like a floppy disk in my closet somewhere, but of Charlie original animations. Yeah.
For our age, I guess it would be like zip disk, right? Like that awkward period where like zip disk came
in
up.
Between. Like I remember finding the first like the zip drive and like Office Max, and it was like $70, and it was like 20 megabytes. I'm like, that's like 3 floppy disks.
Oh my
God. Amazing. So I bought it, and I use that all the time. And people were like, what is that thing? The future.
Was animation ever like does it influence your like making figures or anything?
Oh yeah, because I was like really into. I mean, I don't animate my slides because I'm not a monster. But yeah, exactly. But I mean, I definitely had a lot of time having fun with Flash animation, like just personally for fun. So I think those kind of skills of like making posters and vector design. Like,
wait, do you still use Flash?
No, but it's a vector system.
It's like, I need to stop you right there. No one should use Flash anymore.
It's only a giant security hole in your computer. It's fine. But yeah, as far as Pixar movies and science, I think WALL-E, although we would have been, I don't know how old when that came out, but I think that was a movie that did some really good, it's an example of like good story, good science fiction with some good, even like advocacy tones to it, would be one example about sort of extrapolating from where we are today, but in a way that's, again, like a healthy, good conversation. So I thought, Pixar can do this very well too, which is what I like when I see, even if people don't get the science exactly right, I think if you can find it as a way to make it some way educational, or at least in some way to make it accessible to people who wouldn't be thinking about global warming or the dangers of social media or these things, in a fun, animated envelope.
I think Pixar gets it really quite right, like where it's like they're good at kind of delivering a message.
I mean, there are examples of it where people don't do the message exactly well. So I have Day After Tomorrow, which would be another movie with a similar theme. It's like global warming and like destroying the planet, but it done in like just in a way that just makes
it's an action movie. I don't think you can say it has a message. Oh, I don't know. Actually, I don't
know. Yes, the message. Is there a message? What did we learn from Day After Tomorrow?
Wait, I don't actually recall that so much. Like,
It's a disaster movie. Where,
no, it was a disaster movie, but like, were the sequence of unfortunate events holding climate change responsible for?
Yeah, no, it was saying that like climate change affected the Gulf Stream or something. And then suddenly it was like Snowball Earth, and it happened like instantly. So like, it was maybe not so much like informative to people and how they can be themselves, but definitely meant to be just a shocking disaster flick. Which I guess the disaster movies in general are usually using the science simply to as little as they can to make.
What do you mean? Like most of the time they get it right. Like the core, is just like perfect science. 10 out of 10.
You're referring to the documentary, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And Sharknado, also a documentary. How about Matt Damon?
Matt Damon? I'm keeping an eye out for him in Pasadena. I don't know if he lives in Pasadena, but who knows?
I would have thought, wait, does he live in... I don't actually know if he lives in... not Boston, but like whether he lives in Massachusetts.
I mean, he probably goes back there for Thanksgiving. This is a good segue, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
But he seems to always be in trouble. You got Interstellar, spoiler alert. It's been a long time. Sorry.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting. He's in trouble in that.
In a different way with himself. Yeah, that's actually another good science advocacy moment of someone, or not about advocacy, but like this guy was really good at math, but wicked smart, but he's outside of the. Excuse my on-point Boston accent.
Wait, did you bring up Interstellar?
Yeah.
I was about to say, I really did not like him in Interstellar.
Do you not like his acting or like the character? Because the character was not both. A likable person. Or the acting?
No, I guess I would fault the writing. I don't remember, I don't know if you remember the scene, and I may kind of recounted it a little bit poorly as well. Like the bit where he kind of like betrays them and kind of tries to leave them for dead. And he's like, he just constantly apologizes to him.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sorry, I got to do this. I'm sorry. Like that scene for me was kind of like, okay, you can stop apologizing now. You're still like, you're being a very annoying character right now.
Are you just bothered by people who over apologize?
No. I think it was the both the writing and the delivery, I guess. And so, like at that point, I don't know if I fault him or I fault the writing for that.
I don't know if it was ad lib or something. Yeah, I'm assuming it was how the character was written.
Yeah, it was just not very. It was very awkward.
Mm.
And it contrasts quite heavily with his performance in The Martian.
That's true, which is what we maybe wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was sort of part of this like dialogue at the time. I think there was a meme that was like, "How much money is the U.S. going to spend saving Matt Damon between Saving Private Ryan, Interstellar, The Martian? Like this guy is becoming expensive."
Exactly.
But yeah, I guess those are sort of like Matt Damon was put in two similar positions. He was abandoned on an alien planet, on another planet, you know. And in one case, he just sort of cried and then killed everyone. He tried to. In the other one, he took science and his knowledge of botany and survived.
Well, to quote him exactly, he scienced the hell out of.
Yeah. So The Martian. So it was written by someone who at least has a technical
Andy Weir.
Andy Weir with a book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
I have not read the book.
Okay.
Have you read the book?
I have.
Okay.
Which I think was written chapter by chapter as a blog originally.
Yeah, no.
Then released as a full book. So it's very episodic. It's like Mark Watney starts to figure out a solution, then it blows up. And then he starts to get back, on his feet, and then he blows up. So like it's sort of this alternating cliffhanger, like things are always happening, but he, was a guy who was, I think for a hobby, like calculating orbital trajectories and like
as you do,
sort of a citizen scientist. So like he, a lot of the stuff in the book was pretty accurate. And so I watched it recently, and there's only a few moments that kind of the whole premise. So Mars has 1% of our atmosphere, so there's no wind that can knock you over, or like throw a antenna through you, or knock a spaceship over. Like you
not
would.
With that attitude.
I mean, it'd have to be a pretty. But there's just not stuff.
But there are storms on Mars, no?
Yeah, but it's like a Martian dust storm or something is gonna coat your solar panels in dust. But again, it's not gonna knock over a structure.
We're not talking kilometers per second.
Right. It's not like being in a hurricane, which is kind of how they represented it. You have to make.
Yeah, I mean, you had to make a story somehow, yeah.
So that's
the alternative was they didn't like Matt Damon, and they're like, we're gonna leave without him.
Or it was just 2 hours of them doing their scientific measurements and going home.
That would.
The Martian.
You want a movie? Yeah, you want a movie that really portrays science accurately. I mean, we tried this today, it didn't work. And then...
I messed up control group A. I have to.
I misaligned my laser today, and I spent the next 2 days realigning it.
Too close to home. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yes. So they have to make some sort.
Yeah, they had to make some kind of story. Yeah.
But they did a lot of things right. I think showing the tech that they were using, at least some of it. I'm not sure about the hab itself, but it was fun seeing the Pioneer probe, or not Pioneer, but one of the landers and stuff. I thought was all.
Watching it a second time, I didn't realize this until the second time through. There's a lot of NASA branding. Does NASA actually slap their logo on literally everything? They'll manufacture a toilet and they'll slap NASA's logo on it, or something like that. I
don't know, but I feel definitely in all their spacecraft they do. But as far as I don't. I guess I don't.
I'm pretty sure they had a crate or something where they just put stuff inside for their personal belongings, and there was a NASA logo. Wait, literally everything. Their uniforms that make sense. Their day-to-day wear, would you really want just NASA kind of clothing for literally is there?
Yeah, I feel when I remember. Yes, there is. I feel when I think back to pictures of astronauts in the Apollo, they were just in a T-shirt or something. In the I don't think it's every little thing was.
No, exactly. Yeah.
NASA stamped. That's probably a Hollywood part of them.
They got a good deal from
this
NASA.
bin at Home Depot. Now it's a space bin. Slap on the meatball.
This grill,
NASA meatball.
Grill from this George Foreman grill is now a NASA.
Or I noticed he was using a GoPro in the rover, and I'm
it's
maybe possible that NASA would just. But I actually know GoPro probably wouldn't work in space because there's too much like cosmic.
What if it was
or solar wind and stuff would
space
destroy
GoPro?
It could have been a space GoPro, a true pro.
Well, actually, so I guess that segues quite well with like scientific accuracy for The Martian. I don't know, like personally speaking, I feel like The Martian is like largely kind of like reality driven. Like I don't think there were many parts of it except for one scene, which I'll talk about later, where it was like kind of suspension of disbelief is like gone. But like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, again, like I said, I think it did a good job, especially like for grading the curve of Hollywood, a pretty good job. There was nothing that was like so impossible that, or like just outright wrong that it makes me roll my eyes. But like, there's some funny things where like, he blows himself up. He's like, oh, I didn't take into account the oxygen I was breathing out.
Yeah, okay,
and it's like you were already, like that oxygen came from the room. Like, it's not like you are making oxygen. Right.
No, exactly.
So
like I wonder
it doesn't
what you're breathing.
only, like something like that is like, because I'm an idiot. It's like, that was the right thing to not take into account.
The gravity on Mars was apparently something that they like willfully ignored, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas like it was kind of like it was too complicated to kind of depict gravity accurately to a way where it's like you would have to go out of your way for them to act it out.
Right.
Like,
to make it look like it's like
scenes.
what, 1/3 of our gravity or something?
Yeah, exactly.
On the surface. So yeah, it would have been probably a big investment in special effects to have like a wire rig to like make him look like he's kind of
exactly. Yeah.
like on the, not quite the moon, but a little bit more gravity. Yeah, so that was something that is pretty common in all science fiction. Like when they land on the alien planet, it's like, oh, the surface has 1G. What a coincidence, so it's just...
It's convenient, 9 meters per
second. It is, yeah. It's pretty amazing, really. Yeah. So, one of the big challenges with going to Mars is if people were on Mars, is that there's no magnetosphere. So you are being bombarded by solar wind and other things, and you're completely unprotected. So astronauts need to find a way. If we're going to have astronauts, they have to find a way to protect them, and sort of a thin canvas of a tent really wouldn't do it. Like, you wouldn't want to be there for a few months.
About communications as well? Like, I didn't think that radio would...
Well, there's a few orbiters around Mars, so it just has to be able to reach one of the satellites.
True.
And then it could be like a satellite phone on Earth works, right? So, and beam back. So yeah, so I think that getting back to Earth, of course, would be challenging, but there's a few, luckily, satellites around Mars. I don't know if they mentioned it by name, but they definitely show like the spy photos of his like campsite or his little hab. So that would have been with that spacecraft. You said there was a particular scene that bothered you for the scientific.
Yeah, it was more like because like it's not so much that it's like physically impossible. Well, I guess it is to some degree. It is physically impossible. But like the scene where Donald Glover is the savant in this. In this movie, was he actually in the original? Was he in the book, or was he a character created for it?
Oh no, that character was in the book, like some low-level person who comes up with the solution. Yeah.
Okay. I'm someone who uses supercomputing almost on a daily basis. It's just hilarious where there's this scene where it's like like you say, like Donald Glover was like kind of figuring out, like doing the calculations to check that his idea could work. It's panning past at a NASA high performance computing center, or rather, it's just a bunch of like computer racks, and it's like doing the smooth pan past, and like Donald Glover's just sitting there in one of the aisles on his laptop with
like a USB cable or
Ethernet. No, it's Ethernet. Like no. If USB would just be completely ridiculous. But Ethernet at least. You're getting 100 megabits per second. But like he was sitting there on his laptop, literally like hardwire hooked up to, I guess, one of the racks. I don't know how that works. So he's hardwired up to one of the racks, and like I think he wakes up, or like he suddenly like the screen starts beeping, and
which by the way, beeping GUIs is interface is just another problem. But
you need to know when your calculations are done. Like how else would you know? It's like
when you're pressing a key on a computer. It's like beep, 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 beep. So annoying. But go on. Sorry to interrupt you.
But it's a good point though. Like, how else? For example, in this case, how else would you know that your calculations are correct?
Yeah, didn't it say that? Like,
Yeah, no, it
calculations
said
correct?
calculations correct.
Maybe Ridley Scott isn't the most computer literate person.
Well, I mean,
I don't want to
like,
throw him under the bus. Maybe he is, but
I don't know. But like, basically, if anyone has done these like kind of like either calculations or simulations, I mean, in general, just math problems, right? The idea that the medium you're working on, whether it be pen and paper or computer or whatever, tell you in a very like beeping way as well that your calculations are indeed correct. I'm like, okay, like literally when I watched this in the theaters the first time, like the first thing that came to mind was like, how does it know? Like, like at what? Like, how do you know that
that's not built into your Python?
Oh yeah. No, like regardless.
Oh, congratulations, your calculation is correct.
Like regardless of the result, it would just be like calculations are correct. So like abnormal termination, calculations correct.
They should have shown the true theorist route of just like, oh, it's working. Oh no, it's not working at all. Like that wasn't even close. And then like, oh, now it's should be working, but it's giving me the wrong answer. And then so they should have shown the roller coaster of theory.
I wonder if like would that just confuse people? I don't actually know. Like whether it would be like kind of like a nice touch. Like I mean, personally speaking, like we're scientists, so like we can understand the nuance, but whether or not like the general like audiences would be like, why did he have that roller coaster of emotions there? Like,
I think at best you could do like
like right or wrong. Like I don't understand.
The computer just tells you when the answer's right. Come on, scientists. They could have done like in a montage of like scratching your head and like typing really fast.
Oh, I ran out of disk space, or like.
You must download more RAM.
No, exactly. I downloaded more RAMs.
In The Martian, they definitely were just like, and the computer does its computer things and finds out that it works. And he's in a supercomputer. Are they cold? Are those like server farms? He was like, you could see like
they're air conditioned. They should be air conditioned.
But like, so like the point where you can see your breath. I know they're cool.
Oh no, that would be a waste of power.
Because that's what they made it look like in
the
movie, that he was like shivering in this.
No, I don't think they would be chilled to that point. Like, I mean, well, it would be loud, so I don't think anyone would really kind of sit there without like kind of ear protection. I've been into a HPC, like a cluster room before, and like A is loud and B, like the one that I was in was a little warm. But like, I mean, you can do whatever you can with like AC, but I don't think it would be energy efficient if they were cooling it down so much that your breath.
And also that means that there's condensation problems.
Yeah, that's not a good thing either.
Just bad. Computers don't like that. This is my minor grievance about the movie. So now my experimentalist side was like, so they're like, German man, build the bomb, and like we need a bomb. And so like he goes and he like rigs a bomb with a thermos, and then he puts like a blinking light and a beeper on it. And then they like stick it outside. I'm like, would you really, if you were like had 10 minutes to make a bomb, like spend the time to troubleshoot like a countdown?
Put an LED on it.
LED. And then like if they put it outside of the spaceship, so it's like in space. So another common grievance of space movies, and like you could hear the beeping. I'm like,
wait, actually, on that note, now you brought that up as well. So not only was it beeping, but they were acting as if like they were under a huge pressure. Like they made it sound like it was a time bomb. Whereas it was actually USB powered. Yeah, it was a USB powered.
It's like, why did he make a countdown beeping thing?
No, exactly. Yeah,
like it's armed. Like maybe one LED, like it's armed. Maybe not if you have 5 minutes, but that would at least make slightly more sense.
That being said, like step back, one more step back. Which I like when I saw it, I freaked out because they had literally a canister of liquid O2. Like they just had. I mean, that was what the bomb was. It was like liquid O2. And they put sugar, and he mixed sugar with liquid O2. And that was like kind of like liquid O2 is a pretty good oxidant. and they just put some kind of like, a hydrocarbon source and used the USB electricity as a spark, to trigger it. But like, I actually wonder whether or not they just had cans of liquid O2 hanging around.
Well, it's in the rocket propellant part in the back launch, so they could just have to siphon it off a little bit.
But it was a like electro bottle size.
Yeah.
Like it was like a tiny, where it was like, I use this for parties kind of thing.
Considering like, the history of space exploration and like pure oxygen are not good. I don't think they would just have an easily accessible canister of liquid
O2.
oxygen.
Maybe we're wrong. Like, I'm prepared to be wrong.
I think you might be right.
Like, it doesn't seem like a good idea to have such, like, volatile things. Like, I mean, you know,
or
like
even just a cryogen. Yeah.
Yeah, like, but general lab procedures on Earth, at least, if you trap O2 by accident, like, that's instantly like a lab evacuation.
Yeah.
Like, the fire department gets called and everything. Like, you don't just have like liquid O2 hanging around, like, unless you were meaning to trap O2, in which case it's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trapping O2?
You know,
like, there is no safe way to do this, is basically the thing.
No.
So I don't know, like, maybe we need to get like an astronaut on the line.
That's
true. Can your like connections, do you have a connection? Like, do you know Scott?
We can see. Maybe I'll try to get one of them on this show. Buzz, maybe.
Buzz.
So as far as dangerous things not that you don't want to have in space, I think, yeah, that's one of them.
Because he was so casual about it as well. I was like, yeah, I pulled this out, like, because I mean, yeah, normally LO2,
acetone, whatever.
Yeah, like, let me just pull this off the shelf.
The oxygen liquid.
No, but you wouldn't, like, you would have to keep it. You would have to keep it cryogenically cold. Like liquid O2 is not like you can't just pressurize it and make it liquid O2. Like, you would have to cool it down. So they would use a significant amount of power to cool the liquid oxygen down. And they don't think store it.
Usually liquid, when they have liquid for like the first stage of a rocket, they'll use liquid oxygen.
Sure.
But that's because you have it like in a giant tank at the
space. Yeah, like, it's secure. It's not something that you would like, oh, I need some for my like balloons right now. Like, let me just pull some off. Yeah.
And we've, and like, for example, on space telescopes, the thing that usually limits for infrared ones is when they run out of their cryogen.
The cryogen,
slowly fades away, right? Even in a great insulator of space, it'll still go away.
You do room temperature measurements.
Disgusting. Yes. No offense to my visible astronomy.
But I mean, on the whole, I like Interstellar both for its plot. Oh, sorry, not Interstellar, Martian. The fact that the two of them both had Matt Damon just really confuses me, because like the two of them, two very different characters, I have to say as well.
He's a versatile actor. He can be the victim, and he can be
In The Martian, he's like incredibly positive, and like, but like I think that's what kind of like drew me to the movie as well. Like, is that he is like kind of, what would go through your head if you were stranded on Mars by yourself? Like, grow potatoes would not be the first thing that
for me. I don't know. It would have been. I'm not a botanist. I would.
I wish I was a botanist.
I would like turn the potatoes and like make a still and be like, all right,
time to get to work.
The only thing I can do with these 10 potatoes is just booze.
You could do open air flame distillery.
Yeah. So I don't know. What would you do in Mark Watney's situation?
I don't know. Like, I think the first thing I would probably think about is more communications.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his priority was like, I need to make food, which is like, I mean, it's understandable, but like, in my mind, I would have been like, well, I need to make sure I can contact like NASA somehow. So like in your case, like you were saying earlier, how there are orbiters around Mars. Like, at that point in time.
Right.
Well, the other thing was,
and they did have that one antenna.
The year that the movie was set in is 2035.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it seemed like their like, I don't know, like communications was not their like strong suit at that point.
Redundant communications would be a pretty important part.
No, exactly.
Of an interplanetary mission.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the crew like leaves, they probably rendezvous with something else that's in orbit, right? It's not like it was just another flyby. So you would think the crew would have been there for a few days to like figure out if he's alive, instead of just immediately going back to Earth. Yeah. So getting communication would probably be a good first step. But going back to Interstellar, for how much you hate this character, I mean, a big theme in that movie was like, whatever, like space is not evil or good. It's like whatever evil is there, we bring with us. And it's like that evil turned out just to be Matt Damon that we brought with us.
Wait, that was a theme in the movie?
I believe that was said explicitly at one point.
Oh,
that
okay.
The evil that is there is what we bring with us.
Because the way that you said it, the first thing that came to mind was like Fifth Element for whatever reason. Not
I hope I'm not mixing
Interstellar.
up those movies. Another fantastic documentary.
Exactly. Well, actually, no, yeah, Fifth Element actually was a pretty formative movie
That's a
for
great,
me.
yeah.
I love Bruce Willis in that. Well, I love Bruce Willis in general.
Yeah, it was a different kind of like, less of the Die Hard, more of like sort of goofy side of him, which is good. Yeah. But that was a very good movie. I mean, definitely science fiction, but not necessarily accurate science, but for that, I just
it was like,
I'm like, this one's just for fun.
No, exactly. Is that how you feel about like the Star Wars and Star Trek?
Star Wars is just fantasy to me. Like, I don't even put that in a science fiction category. Star Trek, I really don't. Like, the Force, like, it's magic. These are space sorcerers, not
space wizards.
They are space wizards. And then like Star Trek, which would be the example of like true science fiction.
No, but do you know the canon behind
the midichlorians?
I don't know if it's extended universe actually for Star Wars, like the source of the Jedi powers and whatnot.
The bacteria symbiotic thing.
The mitochondrians.
I mean, it's in canon. It was in episode 1 where they're like, this kid's gross. There's bacteria all over him. He has tons of force. I don't know. They kind of just ruined the Force. Like, the Force flows in and out of us. And then,
that was a strange move.
That was like the original series. And then Lucas is like, but what if they're just eukaryotes?
No, exactly.
Yeah. All right, George.
No, and then it was like weirdly specific as well. Like I looked this up recently, and it was like the whole like Anakin / spoiler alert, Darth Vader. It was something about like he has the most mitochondrians. In like he is the chosen one, and he had at least 20,000 mitochondria. I was like that's an oddly specific number. Like, and it's like 20,000.
Maybe we should just like culture this stuff and just like
no, exactly.
Have like a midichlorian spa in the Jedi Temple. Get their probiotic cleanse. Pro-Force cleanse. They try to like retcon it, like because like when Abrams went for Force Awakens, there was actually Last Jedi. They like said, she like got in touch with this Force, and it's like, oh, it's life, it's death, it's everything. So they try to like walk that back a little bit after. And like the lightsabers are described, at least in the EU, this is probably, but it's like 2 crystals, one for like color or length, and the other one's for power. And but again, that's just like space wizard, that's not trying to be scientific.
You would think that at that level of technology, they would have a tunable light. Like they could just dial the light and change it to whatever they want.
I wish we had that today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you need a ultra fast laser for that.
It's true. An OPO is the closest thing we have.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, so you were gonna say Star Trek?
Oh yeah, so Star Trek. So like there's like the Trekkies versus Star Wars.
Yeah.
And like Star Trek at least like was always about what could be next, like what technology could at least exist, or at least like if something wasn't really physical, like teleportation, they tried to like talk around it at least scientifically. So like for example, with the transporter, they would say like, oh, the Heisenberg correction is like locked in, which means that like where every single particle in the person is, so you're coming over the uncertainty principle for their like beaming. So I mean, even though it's not really real, but they at least try to use real scientific words. And then warp is like maybe something that could be real. And what they don't do very well is like the fact that just special relativity, when you're going to another star system, there's going to be a time effect, right? When you come back, it's going to be way later than they make it seem like instantaneous in time. But besides that, like the propulsion, like antimatter propulsion and space travel and all that stuff was generally, they tried to be pretty good about it.
No, I mean, like it's like how I feel for like the Gundam series, where it's like within the realm of like reality. Like you could, it's not. Right. Yeah, it's not like Star Wars, where it's basically fantasy. Like,
right. And again, like Star Wars is applying the hero story to space, where like Star Trek was applying Gulliver's Travels to space, where like you encounter all these different civilizations and different backgrounds, and you learn something about ourselves. Like
no, exactly.
A group of people who only speak in parable, or people who are trying to be 1920s gangsters, but like I don't know, all these things are kind of
that was a weird. Was a really weird.
Like things like this, but like so it's kind of just like exploring other themes through the lens of science fiction, and even like in the original series, having someone who is black on the who's an officer on the main crew
Yep.
in the 60s was a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, I think famously, Martin Luther King wrote her a letter and everything to stay on the show. So it was, using its platform.
Wait, for the 20s gangsters, I think actually that was a simulation, though. That was data,
I
huh?
thought there was a Next Gen, Kelly, nod yes or no, where there was, where they go to a planet where like a book had fallen or something that described like mobs in the US, and then they based their whole civilization on it. I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
was an
okay,
episode.
okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it. Yeah, maybe I was thinking about it.
There's definitely like holodeck moments with like
there was
Tommy guns and things.
No, exactly. Yeah.
The holodeck was more the hand wavy part of Star Trek. I could do whatever they wanted. That's right. Or like the Sherlock Holmes data episode and things like that.
Well, thank you for this conversation, Charles.
It was nice having words exchanged with you through Zoom.
Yes, I am definitely a human being.
Yes. Well, thanks for coming and chatting, Kelvin, and thanks everybody
for
listening.
tuning in.
And please tune into the next episode.
Next episode
of Scientists Talk Movies.